first project of its kind for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's the first lithomosaic project ever done in New Mexico. Never has this process been done in Albuquerque or in the state. And also, it's the first of its kind where we're not working with just one group of people. We're working with the community in general. Previous public art projects that I'm aware of that have involved students have been through one program, like the working classroom. But this project, really, we're broadening our scope to work with anybody really who's interested in the community. And so this is a really unique project, and the response has been tremendous. People really get excited about this project because they have ownership over it. There are people, we have every workshop is full at this point, and people are coming back and saying, can I come to the next workshop, because they're having such a great time. And it's a rare opportunity that Albuquerque Public Art is offering to have people become involved and come back to the site and say, hey, I was a part of this public art project.
Mama, now can we go there?
100% or just?
No, not 100%.
So that gives you some flexibility too? Yes. In shape? Yes.
The need for the project came from the fact that the channel is very old and is deteriorating rapidly and needs to be replaced. But we saw an opportunity while we were in there reconstructing the channel that we might be able to bring some more elements to the project, some exciting things like multi-use. There is a bike path in the corridor today, and many people use the corridor for bicycling and for walking their dogs, etc. And we saw an opportunity to enhance that even further by putting some more amenities, park-like amenities in the corridor.
Well, what got me involved with the MAFCA was my first year on the city's Environmental Planning Commission. And I couldn't understand why we weren't using arroyos for multi-purpose. I don't think that I was the first one that thought of multi-use, but it was because of my involvement with the Planning Commission and what I envisioned with the MAFCA, that a MAFCA could actually be the leader in making these multi-use facilities.
The idea for this project is to make it a pilot project for all other Arroyo rehabilitations to emulate in the future.
The exciting thing about this is that it's a collaboration not only with the Flood Control Authority, but for this public art project, we are working with the Harwood Art Center to work with young artists from across the city who will be doing some of this, or most of this, tile work.
Well, this will be the first really large project where children have been involved. And again, it's classic that it's Albuquerque and it's the Harwood Foundation, because they're the best of the best. So these are going to be kids that have the best art teachers working with them and the best public art program, working with them. I think a lot of our most talented artists are kids in 4th or 5th or 6th grade, and we're going to actually be able to see them do the work. And because they can work in the comfort of the studio with teachers and chaperones and that kind of thing, they're not out on the site. So we're going to get the best of both worlds. Mosaic is one of the oldest art forms. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. There are a lot of mosaics in existence that are 5,000 years old. And traditionally, the way they've always been done is you take one tile and you set it in on site into like a mortar bed, and then you grout around it, and then you clean it in some way. And so you're on site, working on the floor, in the cold, in the back-breaking environment. In contemporary terms, it involves an awful lot of buckets, an awful lot of water, hoses, washing, troweling, bags of cement, bags of thin set, acid, all of those kinds of things, which are very difficult to do on site. What this process does is it allows everybody to do what they're best at. So the artist works in their studio, and they have a non-toxic glue, they have a non-toxic tile, and they glue it onto a non-toxic piece of mesh. And that's why children can do it. There's nothing toxic about it in any step. And then that's handed over to a concrete company that's a licensee, been trained in the process, and they install it on site. So the licensee takes all the responsibility for permitting, insurance, OSHA, hard hats, all those kinds of things that you wouldn't want to have children in the wintertime on the edge of an arroyo doing. the concrete professionals do it, and the artists work in the comfort of the hardwood studio, and the children are supervised, and it takes all the chaos, or a great deal of the chaos, out of the process. What this process does, what lithomosaic does, is you glue the tiles upside down onto the mesh, and then the concrete is poured. So you're pouring a sidewalk in front of the local elementary school. They're pouring 4 inches of concrete. The designs are all done on the mesh. The concrete is poured, it's wet, it's troweled, and the contractor comes in and puts this in upside down on the surface of the concrete, and then trowels it in and peels the mesh back. And because the glue holding the tile to the mesh is water-based, the glue lets go, the concrete holds on, and the tiles are set on the surface of the concrete. One of the things that's really fun about a project like this is it's so big. I mean, I'm always impressed with a piece of real estate that as a public artist you get offered. And so in this case, it's half a mile of Arroyo in the northeast heights of Albuquerque, with a river running through the middle of it, and a school and a park and church up there. And here's this awesome site, which they're saying, okay, let's put the art in here. It's a water conservation project. It's a safety issue for the Arroyo. There are plazas that go along on the edge of it that are designed by the landscape architect and worked with in collaboration with the people in charge of the Arroyo. So those flat areas in front of the plazas, or that are the plazas, at different points along this half mile of Arroyo, are the sites where we can put the lithomosaic in, because it's a flat process. It ideally goes into a sidewalk, a plaza, or a tilt-up wall, or the top of a seating wall, a poured-in-place seating wall.
Well, when you're working with young artists, it's something to consider how they can have a sense of ownership about this. We didn't want to approach the children and say, here's the design, go for it. We wanted to make sure that the children have a real hand in this project. I think young artists are so gifted and really have so much to offer. Another thing that we have to consider when working with children is the scale. It might be too much to ask to have a 6-year-old do a 4x4 foot square on their own of lithomosaic, but 3 6-year-olds could really work together with an apprentice, with an older artist, to make something really great.
Well, when I heard about it, it sounded really, really fun. I remember in 3rd grade we did a really big mosaic project, and I really enjoyed it, so I wanted to do it again. We first started out with sketches of different things that you can see around the ditches in New Mexico, and then we blew them up and traced them, and we've started putting tile on them now.
I think it's a great opportunity for kids to get to make art and then go see it out in the landscape. I can't imagine if when I was a kid I had had an opportunity to make something that was then part of a public art collection. And then once we brought it into the studio, we laid out each one of the tile pieces individually, and then sketched out the water pattern that we wanted to put behind it.
There's a great deal of value to having art involved in an MFV project, for instance. And where this all evolved, it's evolved over time. I think it all started with looking at the fact that we have limited space. So a MFV would come in and build a big dam, for instance. Well, can't we use that space for other things besides this flood control? And the answer is yes. You can use it for soccer fields, playgrounds, different things. You just have to take the necessary precautions. But so we have many facilities around town that are what we call multi-use. The Ladera Golf Course is a detention dam, but it's also a 27-hole golf course. So that's kind of where this whole idea started, migrating away from the idea that a project is just a flood control project. It can be other things besides this flood control, and become, those multi-use elements can be installed, as well as now we're dealing with water quality and other things. So to address art, that's just the next tier, if you will, in the evolution of how these projects have come about. I think having art in our flood control projects does bring some connectivity with the neighborhood, the greater city at large. I think it helps people connect with what we're doing. And I think it means something to people when they see that there's an art element in a project, that an area that they might walk their dog every day, they can go by and admire that. Whereas if it was just a slab of concrete, you know, they'd probably still walk their dog, but it wouldn't be as aesthetically pleasing as it could be. So.
This looks great.
I'm not interested in making things for people that they can purchase. I'm not particularly enthralled with the gallery scene or the museum scene. So I started looking at public art as a way of making art for everybody. I didn't like the idea that anybody could possess my work. And so when you do work in the public realm, no matter what problems there are with public art that we hear about all the time, you know, art by committee or working with communities can be difficult sometimes. In the end, you still get offered the most amazing pieces of real estate to work with. The job of public artist is one, you know, rife with risk, rife with challenge. I like to say that it's my responsibility to find the potential in people, places, and things. So it's very exciting. Every job is completely different from the next one. You have to go very open-minded into each one. Each job has a completely different set of players: landscape architects, arts administrators, community members, engineers, budget, weather. All those things sort of play into each project. So you have to constantly sort of reinvent yourself and what you think the project is going to be about. What my contribution does is make these projects be award winners. And I think that this is a good example, this one in Albuquerque, where it's going to win an awful lot of awards and it's going to get an awful lot of attention, and the kids from the Harwood are going to get an awful lot of attention for the work that they've done. And it is going to be the thing that puts it over the edge, you know, that last 5 or 10% of, you know, attention to detail that the artists are putting into it are the thing that's going to make them win national awards. And that, of course, then brings in more money. It, you know, certainly makes the city council happy. It makes the neighborhoods enjoy having the project in their community. And hopefully it gives the kids and the contractor something to look at and say, I did that. You know, there's a great deal of pride in putting these things out in the world.